The working class rising up. This is the ruling class punching down.
My day is bigger than your day.
First rule of gladiator school, bro. Don't punch down.
Charging into a goblin's Hail, Trump!
The threat from outside forces is far less sinister, dangerous, and grave than the threat from within.
Control your own body.
We will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country.
We can fight the entire gambling system. Nobody can. But together, everybody can.
I did nothing wrong.
Hello and welcome to Did Nothing Wrong Live, the show that cuts through the noise and helps you make sense of the chaotic information space around us. I'm Griff Somke, and with me is Karl Folk. In today's episode, Congress passes a big, beautiful turd of a bill. Polls show that people are sick as shit of both parties, and we'll talk about grifters and vetting your sources of information. Thanks again for your support. Keep listening to learn more, and remember, smash those like and subscribe buttons. So, Karl, we have a big, beautiful bill. Or at least that's what they keep calling it. I liked it better when it was called Project 2025, because at least that was somewhat more honest. It's got pretty much everything they said they weren't going to do during the campaign. You're all being hysterical about this. There's none of this is going to happen. Don't worry about it. And next thing you know, here we are, not even 6 months in.
Yeah, as is usual, fascism, the road to fascism is paved by people telling you you're overreacting. And this is one of those ones where, like, realistically, no one's actually overreacted yet, considering what all is in here, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, the damage this does to trans folks and to Medicare and
Medicaid, anybody who is low income, who is on healthcare assistance. If you don't live in a state that subsidizes a lot of that, and I mean, God knows how the states are going to pull that off with all of this cut, you have a problem at this point.
Yeah, and they passed it with one vote.
In the middle of the night.
In the middle of the night, and, this is going to impact people in a way that, like, they hid so much in this bill that only now, Saturday, is really starting to come to light that, like, people are not concerned enough about what this is, right? Like, when you look in one of the additional pieces of this is that there is no ability to regulate or go after AI companies.
Yes,
for the next
5-year moratorium on any legislation at the state level on AI.
Yeah, and it's going to be long, and it sounds like it's going to be about a decade at other levels from the wording of this. So there's stuff tucked into this that really truly rewrites the country in fundamental ways, and it is literally Project 2025 as a budget.
Yeah,
and this is going to move billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars from the poorest people in this country to the wealthiest 0.1%.
Yeah.
And again, in addition to that, this crushes a huge portion of kind of what we would consider to have been the middle class in really outrageous ways, whether that's through Medicaid and Medicare slashes, whether that's by hits to things like SNAP, whether that's these deregulation pushes, whether it's differing elements that bring in tax cuts that equal the equivalent to, like, all of Head Start, SNAP, and Meals on Wheels, and they'll just they've cut the equivalent of 10 or 20 times that in certain areas, while giving literally $500 billion or more to a handful of people.
Right. It's like the final nail in the coffin of the Great Society, the final nail in the coffin of the New Deal. All of that is just forget about it, but you can buy a meme coin now. And maybe that will somehow take off enough to the point where you can cover all of these expenses that you now have that you didn't before, if they don't rug pull you.
Well, and exactly. Well, and that's just it, right? Like, this is kind of, this goes right in line with other things too, not just Project 2025, but This goes to the heart of some of the neo-reactionary move from Silicon Valley with how they want to change the way that basically that their funding works for venture capital, certain things like that.
Yeah.
It'll make the push right now, the completely artificial push for AI to be involved with everything, will make that worse. It's guaranteed to make some of the systemic issues that were already really bad just compounded in a way that really is almost indescribable. And so, when you have all of these things at once, it's really hard to see how anyone can look at this and not say, this is one of the end game moves that 2025 talked about, and some of the other groups, that you've talked about.
Right. They wanted this. They've been wanting this for years, and it's like they're very happy.
Yeah. No, and yeah, and this is a culmination of decades and decades worth of financial, kind of law and work from the far right, and it's going to gut clean like green climate tax credits. So
Right.
like it's gonna
Electric
change
cars, you're fucked. If you have an electric car, you're not getting a tax credit for it anymore. In fact, you're going to pay an additional $250 for the privilege of driving that electric car or more.
Yep, exactly. Yep. And there are other things where this bill is going to severely hamper to the point of probably shutting the CFPB, right? It's going to probably end the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau.
Which is something they've been gunning for since it got started.
Since 2008. They're going to, it looks like it's going to change the debt limit, like the ceiling, by about $4 trillion is what they're talking about right now. But hell, this gets into, it's going to change how you get Pell Grants, how student loans are done.
And this is insane because these are programs, supplemental nutrition assistance program, stuff that literally feeds the poorest of the poor.
Yeah.
These are people that cannot necessarily afford to eat if not for these programs at this point. And if we're not going to restructure things in a more equal and fair manner as a society, things like SNAP and, WIC keep the lid on to some extent. And I think that they haven't quite, you want to say they haven't thought it through what this is going to do in terms of radicalizing people, but I think they have. I just
don't think they care.
They think they can deal with it.
Yeah.
I really think that they've baked that in, and they're like, there may be some riots. We'll put down those riots when they happen, and we'll put them down real hard, and we'll send the leaders to CCOT, and then we'll see who's got the juice to do it again.
That would be in line with this kind of movement's ethos, right? And they don't have the military capability to hold a city, but they do have the capability to really fuck people up and scare the pants off of other people who might be thinking of acting.
They can go in and get leaders. They're ready to do that now.
Yep.
They're already doing that with anybody who is a leader in farm workers unions, who's maybe undocumented. They've done that a couple times here in Washington State.
Hell, they got it down pat with Cop City.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is the issue that
they came at journalists for reporting on Cop City. They charged journalists with domestic terrorism for reporting on Cop City.
Well, and that's just it,
they
right?
Filed RICO charges against people for Cop City, which is insane.
Well, and that's just it, right? Like this conversation and what this bill is actually going to have to force is the bigger conversation, and the conversation that started in 2020, literally 5 years ago this weekend, and was put down by Biden's win, right? And ultimately they dismantled BLM and those things to make way for Biden and to bring the temperature down.
Right, and it did.
And it did. But the conversation now is front and center, because what we're going to continue to see is that the things that were done, let's say at Cop City, are now going to be used overtly by fascists to target people who are speaking out against them.
Yeah.
And that groundwork is bipartisan. It sucks, but that's the reality. politics of the last decade have been really dirty on both sides, but one
Mhm.
side, Republicans, have definitely been on the fascist train the hardest. But this shit is the precedent's there,
Right.
and Trump will use it. And what they've put in this bill allows that to be much more kind of wishy-washy,
Right.
especially when it comes to ICE.
Yeah. Yeah. And, speaking of both sides here, I saw a headline that I basically just kind of couldn't believe. I figured it had to be clickbait. The headline was Donald Trump's approval rating increasing with Democrats.
Mm.
And it turns out, I was kind of correct not to believe it, because reading the
Yeah.
article to Newsweek, they're talking about a 2-point bump within the margin of error of the poll. So it's kind of clickbait, really. But
Yeah.
there's some interesting stuff in that same article once you get a little farther down. And it's talking about how Democrats are still historically unpopular. And they're talking about an ABC News, Washington Post, Ipsos poll between April 18th and 22nd. 3,634 respondents. More bad news
Good.
for the
That's a good
Democrats.
cross-section. Yeah.
Uh-huh. When asked who they were trusting more to deal with the U.S.'s main problems, 40% chose Trump compared to 32% who chose Democrats in Congress. And what this says to me is that people are just absolutely sick of the choices that they're being offered. And this has been consistent. Yet,
Yeah.
for some crazy reason, Democrats seem to be unable to evolve here, even when
Well,
it's clear that people don't like what they're selling and prefer the fascist guy. But they continue to try and sell it.
well, and that's, I mean, this is the corporate Democrats' problem, and has been since Clinton, right?
Mhm.
Like, they're selling the same rehash neoliberal center-right bullshit, and people are done with
People are over it.
it. Right? And when you see a poll like that, that actually tells me more about why Harris lost
Yeah.
than anything else, right? Like, you have to offer people actual material fucking change that's positive and is actually somewhat quick on the ground. And that is something that neither party has done. Well, I should say this. Neither party has done it. One party has promised it and lied. The
Right.
Republicans have lied every time they've done this, and they've never done a goddamn thing to help people. They tell them they're going to. And they bluster that they're going to do all these great things for, quote, Americans,
Yeah.
blah, 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 bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. But the reality is, the Democrats don't even tell you that, because they know the reality is they're not. And what we've seen from some of the internal stuff that's come out, the corporate Democrats' plan right now is literally to let the country get so bad and let things get so out of control and so materially terrible for the average American that they will turn to the Democrats out of sheer desperation.
It's a bold strategy,
And
Cotton. See if it pays off
it's
for them.
it's one of the most cynical strategies imaginable. It's also
Yeah.
not it's one that the Democrats have used multiple times in the past to varying degrees. People are done with that.
And the difference now is that you were doing this, say, if you're talking about 2008,
Yeah.
where things under George W. Bush had gone thoroughly to shit, and
Yeah.
people were prepared to vote for almost anybody who was prepared to fix it.
A literally limp sock full of semen would have won over
Right.
George.
I mean, I've told this story before, but I was on a business trip and I was training at an MMA gym in Evansville, Indiana. I just wanted to get some jujitsu in. So I stopped by and decided to roll at this place.
Yep.
And I heard a guy describe Obama in completely racist terms as I was leaving, yet was still going to vote for him. He's saying anything horrible you can think
Yeah.
of about Obama, but he's still voting for the guy
Yep.
because things are so fucking bad. And
Yeah.
that was the minute I knew he was going to win.
Oh yeah.
Like, if you won those people,
Yeah, you won the election if you've got the racists
the
who are like, fuck.
absolute guy who's probably going to the Klan meeting after he gets a shower and gets his robes on.
Right, and
And
he's going to
he's gonna
literally
vote
still
for
vote
Obama.
for the. Yep. Mhm.
May not like
No, and
black people at all,
that's
but he knows that it's a better deal.
and that's just it, right? Like, we've done this before.
Mhm.
The difference, one of the major differences is the existential threat, but also
Right.
in this case, the overt damage that's being done and the true threat to people's lives, livelihoods, and day-to-day existence. And it's not some theoretical, oh, they're targeting this group. It's people are getting fucking disappeared off the streets illegally.
Uh-huh.
And the Democrats are still just sitting there because they really don't think this is too far yet and that people will turn to them. The reality is people aren't going to turn to them unless they offer them something better. And just not
Right.
being Trump is not enough.
It
And
was
it's
enough
never
in 2020. It wasn't enough in 2024.
Yeah, and I would even argue that the big difference in 20 was that literally the trauma of the summer and the
Mhm.
pandemic, that was it. You couldn't there was no way you're coming back from that politically, right? Like there
Right.
was just too much there, too much damage had been done, and it was too overt. This is different now.
Yeah.
There's no constraint. There's no, they're buying 2028 hats for a reason, right? Like this
Mhm.
isn't something where they're planning on giving up what they've taken now.
Yeah.
And so there's no reason to think all the data suggests that this kind of action we're in right now leads to a point much sooner than 2 years where there aren't free and fair elections.
Right.
With that understanding as well, this weighted out temperament isn't just dangerous and cynical. It's violent.
It's
It, it, it,
malpractice
it, it,
at the
it's
least.
violence against the population in a way that really is indescribable, and it's inexcusable. And the party itself, I've been thinking about this, and I'm writing a piece right now on it. But like, they are dangerously close to stepping over the line into farce and into satire so fully that
Yeah.
they actually can't recover without something major happening to the party, literally like multiple members getting kicked out in public fashion and stuff being denounced.
I think you're almost more likely to see, with the way things are going, them decide to make an example out of an AOC or somebody like
Absolutely.
that, because
No, they absolutely will, and they will try and elevate someone like Elise Slotkin or
right.
someone like that, because the goal now isn't to actually help people, it's to retain power.
Right. I mean, rest in peace, Jerry Connolly. He's 75 years old, man, died of cancer. That's awful. You hate to see it. And this is the guy that they elected to take over the oversight committee chairperson spot that could have gone to AOC.
Yeah. And that's just it, right? Like this is
It's a power grab.
it's a
holding on.
well, and it's one of those things where it's like, so there's this concept called the iron law of institutions, right? And the
Right.
iron law of institutions states that like certain members are more willing to see the institution fail than give up their seat, even if it would be save the institution and other things if those people remove themselves. And this is one of those cases, I think, where we're seeing the iron law of institutions as well as corruption and other things start to come to bear. And, the Democratic Party as a whole has to come to a decision as to what it is.
Yeah.
And what those poll numbers that we were talking about show is that's exactly what has to happen. And the rebrand can't be, we're going to do the Dick Cheney light thing.
Yeah. There's
It's
no
going to
market for
be,
that.
no,
No one wants that.
the market is like truly the political market right now is how are you going to make my life better in the day to day, i.e., how are you going to make me safe? How are
Mhm.
you going to make it cheaper for me to live? And how are you going to make sure that I don't wake up tomorrow morning and don't have a job because the government cut my position due to any number of factors?
Right. And as we've been saying since the day of the election, what they need to do is start on two very simple principles. They need to say, if you elect us on day one, we will do UBI, Universal Basic Income,
Yep.
and we will do Medicare for all. And the way we will pay for this is by raising the marginal tax rates to what they were under Nixon.
Yeah, we could even
Yeah.
go one back. Let's bring back Ike Eisenhower's marginal tax
Oh,
rate.
yeah,
on
you'll love that. You'll love that.
We'll bring that 92% right in and just nestle it right in
Mhm.
there.
And I
And
mean, that's the kind of thing that if you can get people to believe you, and I think that you still can, if you say it in those terms, then you can definitely win an election out of this, because people need security.
they
People
need
are
change.
scared.
Yeah.
People can't afford to live.
Yep.
You are going a long way towards solving those problems if you put out that you're going to take some of the stuff that is really the most critical thing that people worry about, like health insurance, off the table.
Yeah.
I mean, yet again, it comes out that United Healthcare is using algorithms that are wrong 90% of the time to
Well,
determine coverage.
Not just that, they're getting their fucking people to change people's paperwork to say do not resuscitate.
Oh, that
to
was
save
fun.
them money. I mean, that we need to be. I again hate to be that guy, clarity guy over here. That's called fucking murder.
Mhm.
There's no other like we don't.
And I'm not handing it to them because you don't got to hand it to the
No.
CCP. But if he did this in China, they would have
Some-
shot him. It wouldn't have been Luigi who shot that CEO. It would have been the CCP who lined that guy up and shot him against a wall.
Well, literally though, and like the thing that's irritated me forever with the Democrats, one of the things, but the thing that is so glaring to me is they literally think that most people are stupid.
Yeah.
And don't see this shit for what it is. Most people are smart enough to know when they're getting fucked by a system or by a person, and we know we're getting screwed. Everyone knows somewhere deep down inside they're getting screwed.
Yeah.
And what's become, more clear with United, with all of this, though, is we have a serious fucking corruption problem.
Yeah.
And, I will be the first one to blame capitalism for a lot of things. This is fully what you would expect when capitalism has no constraints.
Yeah.
And what, people have really come to me and said, well, how do you ever expect to do this? There's some really concrete ways, right? Like there are actually things we can do, whether that's breaking monopolies, whether that is the 92% marginal tax rate these assholes used to pay when we were actually the wealthiest country on the planet.
Instead of just pretending to be.
Instead of just lying about it. No, there are ways to do this, right? Like if we get out of this to the point where we can actually legislate as a democracy, well, that means we're getting rid of Citizens United. It means we're getting rid of certain other things that have to be done. And it means we're going to have the tough conversation about rule of law and what that actually looks like
about term limits on the Supreme Court.
All of
about
this,
term limits in Congress.
I mean,
all of it.
We have to address this as what it is, which is a reconstitution of democracy in this country. And it's a second reconstruction. We never actually did the first. We allowed the same white terror that Trump represents and in part has channeled to totally derail the post-Civil War. So now we have to do that work. And that is actually going to mean doing some of the things that the far right, the conservatives, and others, business specifically, have been scared of.
Yeah.
And we need to make them very aware that we don't give a shit. Sorry, guys, you had your run, you fucked up. And that doesn't mean that we don't do capitalism. It means we rethink through what that looks like. We just have to have a longer conversation. It's the same thing with rapid digitization and AI. We have to slow it down so we can have the conversation about how to do this responsibly for everyone.
And we had Scott Stanton, sorry about that, on the show. And one of the things he said would be a really great way to sell UBI, because he's the UBI Crusader guy, is think of it like a copyright royalty on all of your stuff that AI has used to train.
Yeah.
You are just simply getting your royalties for all of that because you probably didn't sign up for that.
No. And realistically, like, I'm a Luddite. AI has to be destroyed. We have to really think through what we're doing with this, right? Because it's not destructive in the way that the tech boosters are talking about. It's destructive in the way that mechanization was for people. And it's damaging in a way outside of that's a little bit more, kind of opaque because of the damage it does to us cognitively. But like, this is really one of those moments where we have a chance, if we want, to really slow down and examine what this is and what its effects are.
Right.
And, the bill, like this big, beautiful bill, doing 5 years to a decade's worth of moratorium on being able to regulate it. It's because they don't want us to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And those things kind of all of this ties back together as kind of nebulous as this little conversation has been. Like it all ties back together into we have to understand what's happening here and be clear about it because it's 50 different things at once. And that's why they did this bill this
Right.
way. And we're going to continue to find things out. And there's a chance it doesn't pass, right? Like I think that's slim.
Very
but
slim.
but I think there is a chance that it doesn't. So we're not at a foregone conclusion yet. People can still call their reps, and they probably should, to say, what the fuck are you doing? But the reality is, like, we have to now go into this knowing that there are going to be multiple fronts where we have to really talk about slowing down at the same time we're having to speed up in others.
Yeah.
And, this is just going to be a lot of kind of thinking through steps ahead as best we can.
And of course, putting your faith in the Senate means putting your faith in people like Fettermansion, or whatever we're calling him now, that are just
Fuck, man.
proving that they, meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Yeah.
We're going to still have a couple of these fuckers in every single session. It doesn't seem to matter.
Yep.
It's terrifying.
Until the population does something about it, right? Like the Republicans, they had the reverse problem where they had a bunch of, old timers who weren't going to give up, and then they just all got nuked by fascists.
Yeah.
And, that's how it's probably going to have to work for the Democrats, where a bunch of younger progressives and leftists are going to have to step up to the plate and swamp the game.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably about the most likely thing to happen at this point.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's going to be an insurgency against the corporate wing of the party at some point. Like, it's just untenable, right? And the anger is just so palpable.
Oh, it's out there.
Yeah.
And it's boiling.
Oh, yeah. Well, and it's just, their whole environment right now is screwed, right? Like, they're latching on to anyone they think can help them in the digital space. They're putting themselves in a position again to kind of put themselves into the farce land, right? Because they're not doing some of the due diligence they need to make sure that they are actually bringing the best voices possible.
Right. And they're throwing millions at the idea of finding a new Joe Rogan. And it's like, no, you don't need a new Joe Rogan. You need to change your whole approach to legislating.
If you're not watching this episode, there's a large dismissive wanking gesture going on my end.
Yeah.
Good fuck Christ.
You don't need a new Joe Rogan.
No,
you need to do things differently.
No, actually, you don't need a Joe Rogan, right? What you need to do is actually fucking change people's material conditions in a positive way, really, for them, and not just give them theater. You do that, you don't actually need a fucking Joe Rogan.
The fact that you're talking about a new Joe Rogan tells me you don't understand the problem.
Well, it also tells me that you're trying to send people on a wild goose chase instead of actually looking at the real problem, which is the fact that the corporate wing literally doesn't want to do anything different.
Yeah. And speaking of, not doing anything different, sometimes it seems like we are condemned to repeat our mistakes. And this is one of those things that's going to get a little inside baseball. And, if you kind of want to skip it, I'll totally understand. But I think it's got to get talked about. And I did a live stream a couple days ago. I think it went pretty well. I didn't really know the guy who was doing it very well. He goes by Machine Pun Kelly. And, props to him for having me on. It was pretty cool. One of the guests was a rapper named Awkward that we've had on this program.
Friend of the pod? Actual friend of the pod.
Yeah, actual friend of the pod.
Not
Awkward.
shitbag.
He's a good guy.
Yeah.
And the other guest was a journalist named Priscilla Grimm, who has managed to get charged with domestic terrorism over her coverage of the Stop Cop City movement in Atlanta. And just in case you're not familiar with that, the state of Georgia was trying to build a police training facility. It was colloquially known as Cop City. The local residents, among others, came out to protest it. One of the protesters, who went by the name of Tortuguita, was killed by the police. A lot of people ended up being charged with domestic terror offenses and RICO. They literally were talking about, anybody who gave mutual aid was going to go down under RICO for this. The most heavy-handed set of prosecutions you can ever. I mean, she got nailed for sleeping on public land. Yeah. Literally public land, and they charged her with domestic terrorism for that. So everyone did great on the stream. Really, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I had a great time. I'm not used to going completely live, but it worked. I couldn't be happier, really, with how that one came off. And last night I got a message on Blue Sky from somebody who said, "Oh man, did you see that guy had Rebecca Jones on his program a few days ago and treated her like she actually knew what she was talking about?" And I was like, "Oh my God." And for those of you who don't know, Rebecca Jones is a former Florida State employee who came to her bit of fame for saying that she got fired for defying Ron DeSantis. And then it comes out that she's actually this really scummy grifter. Like, she's getting fired for things like, having an inappropriate relationship with a student and all kinds of other stuff. She's made her money for the last few years on basically posting on Twitter and saying that she's being silenced. And she claims that she was fired from the DeSantis administration for providing different data on COVID than what they wanted to hear. But in reality, there were some serious personnel complaints about her, but she's figured out a way to always make it about her and make herself a professional victim. And that's basically what she's been doing for the last few years.
Well, and I mean, she's a conspiracy theorist, right?
Absolute
Like, she's part of the
conspiracy
blue
theorist.
anon kind of circular of voices.
Her latest thing is going off about, killing ICE and killing everybody associated with the Israeli embassy anywhere. And it's like, look, no, we're not doing that. We're not having that fucking conversation. Yeah. Sorry.
Jesus Christ.
She's like going to get herself a knock one of these days. And, I don't like to say anyone deserves it, especially under this administration, but if anybody does, right?
No. Well, this wouldn't be her first knock and talk. Let's just say that.
And I find myself thinking like, okay, that sucks. I'm not trying to rag on Machine Pun Kelly. Thank you for having me on the show. That was a lot of fun. I think, though, that we're running into the problem that a lot of us at this level have of, is this something that can really be done well when you're the only person that's actually doing any of the vetting? You're the only person that's really like determining whether any of these people know what they're talking about or not. And that's really hard.
Well, it's gotten harder too, right? Like, I think the thing for me that I've really noticed on this front specifically is just how polluted the environment's gotten in the last 5 years, right? And like, I mean, hell, I've run into this, right? Like a year ago, I did a really interesting talk that got published, and then I came to find out afterwards that it was a subsidiary of RevCom. Yeah. I wouldn't have fucking done that if they had told me that out the gate. No questions asked.
And the thing with RevCom is they've made a career out of not telling you this kind of stuff. They don't like to say, "Oh, hey, it's RevCom, it's Bob Avakian, it's the new communism." No, they call themselves Refuse Fascism.
Right, exactly. No, and again, like, for those of us, especially on the academic side, we want to be able to get information out.
Right.
And it makes it hard when the environment is truly polluted with people, not necessarily even bad actors, but people who don't have a background in vetting their own stuff, might have a background, like in the case of Refuse Fascism, with fucking a cult. It's really tough, and it's getting increasingly tough when you have stuff like the resist media, ecosphere, which really is unfortunately shot through with incredibly problematic conspiratorial voices, whether it's Rebecca Jones, whether it's, longtime asshole and conspiracy theorists who like the Russia and bizarre like mind fuck conspiracies, whether it's people who are out there saying,
"Arrest Mike Flynn! Arrest Mike Flynn!"
Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah,
like
guy.
Yeah. When you're getting sued by Mike Flynn for being so out there, you're in a different league,
and
right?
You're losing. And you're losing.
It's one of those things, though. The entire ecosystem right now, because it's modeled around something like Midas Touch, which is not media in the sense of news. It's not about being transparent. It's a fucking mess. Right. And a lot of, unfortunately, what I've been seeing when I'm talking to others who are more deeply into like watching real time kind of metrics, these people are eating up the space. And so a lot of liberals who are online and in these resist circles are getting flooded with people like Rebecca Jones, but then they're back, then they'll have at the same time, they'll have someone like yourself on a couple weeks later,
Right.
and then they'll have someone else who is an expert, let's say, in like Russian propaganda. And so like it's very similar to the right wing ecosystem in that like they'll sandwich all these things together. So there's this bizarre through line, and that's really tough. Like it's something you and I have talked about off air, but like just understanding that for the left they see it as a commodity, not
Yeah.
a service. That's really fucked things up, and it puts people who are trying to educate and trying to use their knowledge and their years of experience and all of this, it puts people in a really tough space when you don't have other people that are doing some of the research that you might need to do to say, I need to look at 14 different social media accounts. I
Yeah.
need to look at what these people have written in the past. And, for me, one of the bigger concerns and why I don't do many shows outside of the people that I know and trust is there's a concern too when you're dealing with a commodity, quote unquote,
Right.
that someone will change what they're selling in
Yeah.
the future. And it's really tough. This goes to a lot of the issues that we have right now, right? That we don't have a trustworthy system to say, okay, well, this person worked with this person, or this person did this and this and this, and that makes them, trustworthy source. And the liberals really did take on a view in the years after the first Trump win that their way to win was to find a Joe Rogan, but also increasingly create bubbles. And when you have an information environment that's as absolutely screwed up as the one that we have across the board, not just in social media, getting had in that really bizarre way that you can now is, I think we all have to just
Right.
know that it's going to happen once or twice, but also that like it's really important for everyone, people listening to this and us as much as everyone else, to really know where we are
Yeah.
in that environment and what you're doing. Because like with me and fuck, I hate RevGun.
Yeah.
I have written thousands of words about my hatred of that fucking cult,
Right.
and I still kick myself occasionally about it, right? And it's one that like luckily people understood that like I had made a mistake, and luckily people are understanding. But still, this is a problem when when you have an environment where people are trying to make a space where they can be trusted.
Yeah.
When they do that shit, because it puts us as individuals who want to be on that show in a fucked position.
Yeah, it does.
Also puts their listeners in a terrible position where you have to ask, is this a real source? Is this someone being honest to me, or is this someone selling me bullshit?
Right.
This other person, the host, didn't know enough to not have involved. And that's tough, right? Like it's a tough environment right now, and it's why everyone has to do better across the board at really cleaning up the media environment they're in. And by having this conversation, that's what we're doing. But other places need to be honest and really look and say, well, this person's making outlandish claims. Let's do 30 seconds of work.
Right. And this is what's frustrating to me, is the idea that we keep constantly hearing, and we talked about it a little bit on that stream as well, how come we don't have, a media apparatus? And I find myself thinking, wait a second, we do. But
Yeah.
the problem is it's people like Midas Touch.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a platform that's huge. Those guys get, 100,000 times the streams we do.
Yeah.
And I'm not jealous. I mean,
No.
really, if we wanted to play that game, we'd be playing that game.
Yeah.
But the problem is we can't sit here and put that much airtime towards people who have a vested interest in getting paid off of it and turning it into a career, and then bitch about why we don't have a media.
Right. Well, and it's the commodification of politics versus actual like change, right? Yeah. And that's the problem for me, and why I've been very, very, very opposed to doing certain things with social media and with this kind of thing, because the reality is like we're never going to sell people on democracy.
Nope.
What you have to sell people on is being decent. And like that's not hard because most people are decent. And the way you're decent is by having actual conversations that aren't centered around, are we going to get sticky eyeballs? Are we going to get clicks? Are we going to sell ad space? It's about what do you actually bring that people can use.
Right.
And it's really tough because the resist environment, let's say, for lack of a better word, isn't based on helping someone. It's based on commodifying a belief that their politics are better and therefore, going to win.
Yeah.
And it's selling people a false vision of what politics actually are. And it's the theater, right? Like I talk a lot about neoliberal theater here and in writing. And the resist circles are that, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a performance of resistance versus the actual act of getting people educated to the point where they can be resilient enough to do the work of resisting internally as well.
Right.
And that doesn't come by a commodified click farm. That comes by taking the time to do the research, to do the talking with people, and the work that real both journalism, but also those who do research at an academic level are versed in. And it's about slowing the conversation down, not speeding it up to get more clicks.
Right. And until we start to really nail that down, and until we start to have that as a priority, we're going to end up with a lot of effort being wasted because people are spinning their wheels, paying attention to shit that just does not help, that does not help to accomplish anything.
It's stuff at the peripheral, right? Like it's we do really well as a society at looking at puddles, and saying, "Wow, that's rain," but we never really do the work of looking up and saying, "Well, why where the fuck are the clouds coming from? Why does it rain?" And this is one of those situations where if we do that, if we really start saying, "Well, we know it rained because there were puddles. Let's see where it came from," we can actually do so much more good for so many more people. And it's not about that, like I think a lot of people want this to be a political disagreement when it's not. It's an actual it's a disagreement on what the outcome's supposed to be.
Right. And I think honestly, all you can do is accept that, sometimes you're going to make these mistakes. Sometimes you're going to find yourself believing somebody you shouldn't have believed. You're not going to do enough research. You're going to get burned. It's happened. It's happened to me. It's happened to everybody.
It's the human condition, right? Like people like high trust environments are high trust environments. And when you get into a situation where high trust environments are screwed up by people acting in bad faith, it's hard.
And when we start to realize that people trust podcasters and influencers at this point far more than they trust the mainstream media, then I think it's on all of us, myself, everybody included, to make sure that we are trying to be that change that we want to see. Because you cannot sit here and slag off the mainstream media as not telling the right stories and being corrupt and being all corporate bought, and then turn around and put people like Becky Jones on.
No,
and again, I am not ragging on him. He is trying to do something good. He is trying to go out there and, as he puts it, unite the left. He's right. That needs to happen. But people like Becky Jones are not the people we need to unite with.
No, and they'll fuck up your ability to actually do it, right? Because like what you actually come to find out if you pay attention, again, most people aren't stupid and they can smell bullshit from a mile away. And when people are presented with the reality that someone was full of shit, they get mad about it. And, it's tough because a lot of times grifters or straight up con jobs work in the same spheres as people doing really good work in good faith because of the fact that it's a good faith effort to do work and to do it. And they know that's an environment where people are going to maybe be more willing to hear them out.
Right. Right.
And
they take advantage of it.
100%. And that's the thing. Like liberals really need to understand that people are going to fucking lie to them.
Yeah.
And they're going to do it for money. And there's a lot of money in the resist ecosystem,
Mhm.
and there's a lot more money in getting into the ecosystem and fucking it up.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are people who will pay handsomely for that
Yeah.
on both sides.
Oh yeah. It's not just this one case, right? Like you hear about this all the time from people where, they get into a situation where they've done an episode of some show and then they find out down the road that like 10 episodes later that, that show is now doing absolutely unhinged conspiracy theorizing or
Right.
something akin to that. And it's just, this is the environment is ripe for people to change their opinion based on how much money they make.
Right. Right. So your assignment, again, I'm not your professor, I'm not your dad. I can't tell you to go and do these things, but I would suggest that every time you see somebody on your favorite podcast, whatever it is, you Google them and
Yeah.
see if they actually bear out what they say that they are. See if this person has some incredibly negative things. And they'll blame haters. They'll blame
Yeah.
conspiracies. I mean, these
All
people
day.
love their conspiracies to get them. They
Yeah.
will blame that sort of thing, but there's only so many times that actually works until you find yourself thinking, hey, wait a minute. Why do all these people hate this person?
Well, yeah. And I mean, there's with certain members like Rebecca, like our favorite General Flynn and Susie enthusiast, you know, the, this is really for them. It's just a game,
Yeah.
and it's cynical as shit, right? So like, I don't know. Media literacy is something we all have to practice. It's a muscle.
Yeah.
And I don't, people make mistakes all the goddamn time. They just generally, if it's an actual mistake, you don't repeat it.
No.
And that's for me, like with RevCom. I vocally said shit since then that will ensure that they do not ask me again.
They
But
follow
like,
me on Blue Sky. It's wild. Just
fuck
like, okay,
Christ.
fuckers,
Well, we need to maybe do a full rundown of the cult. But like, the reality
you would
is,
not like my opinions on your group. You just won't.
I would say, I mean, there are some things I've written. I should dig out some of the stuff I said about RevCom in 2020. Because if they had any power, they'd send out the Vanguard after me, and this tells me they don't. So
Unfortunately,
I can
their
keep
leader is hiding in France because of death threats.
yeah,
Poor
well,
Bob Avakian. Poor Bob Avakian.
death threats, meaning I can't go back because I might get sued.
Yeah, poor guy.
No,
Poor
it's
little guy.
it's a thing, and like the media environment's fucked. So acknowledging it, I think for all of us, right? Like the best thing anyone can do in this situation, whether it's one of us or any one of us, is just acknowledge it, understand how it happened, and then work forward, right?
Yeah.
And for most people, and I can guess that most people who listen to this show regularly, they've had moments where they've been had. It's
Mhm.
it's just by virtue of the fact that we're in a shit situation where people really genuinely want hope. And so they're latching on to people like Rebecca because she's got a good story. It's just it
Yeah.
happens to be bullshit like everything else she does.
Yeah. So do your best.
Yeah.
We'll
I mean,
continue to do our best to
yeah.
try and make sure that we are bringing you the most vetted and well thought through people that we can, and we're
Yeah.
not letting any of that slip by. And if we all do better, then eventually the Rebecca Joneses of the world just hopefully won't have an audience.
Well, they die out.
Yeah.
Right? Like the better the environment gets, the harder it gets for people like that to show up and sustain.
Yeah.
And
Democracy
that
dies in darkness and grifters die in the light of the sun.
amen.